I've always kind of believed that when you come into this world with big dharma, and I obviously have, then what accompanies that is big challenges, big obstacles, big difficulties. Many of you know I spent the first 9 years of my life in a series of foster homes and orphanages. I don't look back on that as anything other than a great opportunity for me to learn self-reliance as a young boy, and then consequently teach people about self-reliance, which is what I've been doing for 35 years or so, with 30-some books and programs of all sorts and so on. It isn't to say that those 9 years weren't filled with some heartaches and some sadnesses and missing your mommy and things like that. But my mom, who is almost 94 now, in a hospital tonight, having a pacemaker put in on Tuesday. At that age, that's a challenging thing as well. I've been through a lot of the kinds of struggles. I mean, we had nothing when I was younger. Everything I have is what I earned. I look upon that as a great advantage. But it was just the dharma that I chose, I guess. I've been through divorce twice. I know what that feels like. I know the heartache of breakups and have lived with them and struggled with them and have used it to help me to become a better person, a more compassionate, kinder person who listens more than he talks. I've been through the addiction route in my life and struggled with it on many different levels. From alcohol, which I can proudly say it's been 22 years since it's crossed into my body. Yeah, thank you. But the previous 22 years, I drank enough to make sure that these 22 years were covered. So, and not just alcohol, but drugs as well. I've been down that road and know what it feels like and know the struggle of it and the pain of it.
But Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. So the storms of our life, if we try to shield ourselves from the storms of our lives, we don't get to see the beauty of the carvings of what those storms bring for us. And virtually every spiritual advance, not virtually, every spiritual advance that you make in your life, that I've made in my life, has been preceded by a fall of some kind or another. I always give the example of when I was in high school, I was on the track team, and I was the high jumper on the track team, among other things. And the bar would be up here, and we get back here, and you run up to this is a metaphor for what I'm speaking about, and you run up to the bar, and you run up and get down as low as you can, as fast as you can, and in the process of getting down low, it would allow you to propel yourself over the bar. So the low points of our life are the times when we should be in a state of gratitude, as hard as that is for us to do, but that's what an enlightened being does. Is they begin to see that, these low points in our life. Now, I've been through some low points in my life, very dramatic low points. When my wife and I separated 12 years ago, I mean, it was the closest thing that I could call it to a depression for months and months. And out of that depression and out of that deep hurt and sadness about breaking up our family, in a sense, because we're not really broken up, but I was able to write The Power of Intention, which is the next book after Erroneous Zones that just soared and just took off and sells in the millions all around the planet. And it came from a place of compassion. That it's when you are in those low points that you have a tendency to reach out to other people with more compassion and more love and more understanding because of what you're going through yourself. So that, I think, and this is true, I could give 1,000 examples of that, but the whole idea of it is that these low points, the struggles that we go through in our lives are really significant things, and look back at them and you can do an awful lot of growing from them.
So that when you bring higher energy to the presence of lower and slower energy, energy that we call evil, energy that we call disease, energy that we call depression, you are not only sending the disease and the depression and the despair away, you are converting that very energy into the higher and the faster energy that is being brought to its presence. The same thing is true of hatred. When you bring love to the presence of hatred, hatred not only dissolves, but it turns to love. All you have to do is light a candle, turn on a light, and the darkness dissolves. The darkness disappears. But more than that, and this is really crucial for what I'm presenting here this afternoon, the darkness is converted to light.
Years ago, my wife and I were going through some personal difficulties. We were making a decision about whether or not we were going to stay together, very frankly. Everybody in a relationship, I believe, has these moments and times when there's a struggle there and you've been together for a while and you're not certain whether this is the right path and you're thinking about these things and so on. And nevertheless, it was a very difficult time emotionally for both of us. And I can remember years and years ago, as we were going through this, what it did for me to be in that state. I became much more loving. I became much more concerned with other people. I became less concerned with the pettiness of so many things that you find yourself worked up about, because I had a different focus in my life. And I can remember thinking, as we resolved it and got back closer together, and today are very close and very loving together, looking back on that time as like something that I had to go through at that time. And that what it did is it helped me to see how absurd it is for us to be focused on the minutia of life. Whether or not the walls are clean, or whether or not the toys are put away, or whether or not your food is prepared on time, or whether somebody is late with something, or whether the phone doesn't ring or does ring or whatever. Like, all of those things are so minute in contrast to what you're really struggling with. And then what it also helped me to do in terms of getting this big picture was to look at some of the things that other people were going through, some of the problems and difficulties that they were having. Very often when something goes wrong in somebody else's life that we're close to, one of our parents gets ill, there's an accident of some kind. When Marilyn had that accident, I can remember how it affected me. And it gives you pause to remind yourself that you have a lot to be thankful for, and that you have a very powerful mind here that can make anything happen that you want to happen, as long as you keep yourself centered or keep yourself focused. I was able to shift from all of those petty little things. I can remember I was doing a show out in Seattle at that time that I was going through that tough period. And somebody asked me a question that 6 months before I would have answered sort of flippantly, sort of smart-alecky. It wouldn't have given it the attention that it deserved. I would have thought of it as perhaps too trivial. And I can remember looking into the woman's eyes who asked me the show. I was on a TV show out there in Seattle, and thinking, because I was struggling at that time, I became much more compassionate towards this person, much more tuned into the pain that they were feeling, even though it seemed trivial in comparison to what I was. And it allowed me to get to be more loving. And then I look back on that now and I think, well, that's what I had to learn. That's what it was for, that there's a purpose in everything. And that perhaps one of the things that I had to learn 8 or 10 years ago was how to be more compassionate. And perhaps the only way I was going to learn how to be more compassionate was to have to go through some of this stuff myself. So, like, you can do that. You can do that now in your own life. Know that there's a lesson in this for you. Know that there are no accidents in this perfect universe. And know that the deep troubles that you may be experiencing or may be hard for you have something in them for you. And that there's a secondary purpose to them. And if it does help you to slow down, and if it does help you to get a bigger picture, and it does help you to be more compassionate and more loving towards other people, then what you do is you begin to bless those things that are in your own life as offering you an opportunity to transcend them. And once you've transcended them, then you don't have to go back to that again. And for sure, my wife and I do not have to go back to ever doubting whether we want to make it and whether we want our family to stay intact and whether we want to stay loving and so on. We don't ever have to question that again. We've been there, and we both learned how to look within
when you do look within, to be grateful for what this person is offering you. So that every time I think about my wife behaving in a way that I don't like, or vice versa, we've learned how to zip it, how to just not make ourselves miserable by saying things and by doing things that will just create more difficulties. Because we've been on the edge. We've been to that edge, and we've looked over the edge and seen what it's like to maybe have to raise a family as a single parents or whatever, and to be without each other. And now we're a tremendous source of strength to each other, instead of looking for the things that we don't like. So the way to the big picture often is through seeing the problems in your own life from a different perspective, and seeing how difficult other people have it,
We have these people in our lives. And these people show up, and they say something in a certain way, and it doesn't make any difference if somebody else said it, we would just ignore it. All right? But they come along and they say this thing, and boom, off you go. And you're frantic, and you're mad, and you're angry, you're upset, you're worked up, you're feeling unworthy. So these people, to me, are your soulmates, you see. Because what they're teaching you at any given moment in your life is you haven't mastered yourself at this moment. You're not in charge of yourself. Those people who can push your buttons and send you into a frenzy, or into an angry space, or into a space of self-repudiation, are people who are divine masters disguised as manipulative, crass, unconcerned people. And rather than being mad at them and being upset with them and saying that they shouldn't be this way, your task ought to be to turn to them and bow and say, I honor you as my teacher. Now that's a hard thing for us to get to, but don't you all have people in your life who are just like that? And you know you're stuck with them. These are people who are not on your path. You know they're not on your path. They're not even on an entrance ramp to your path. They're in a different place. They're from a different planet. But nevertheless, they're there with you. And you're sharing the journey with them. And it's very interesting. I mean, I have 8 children. And my children are the ones that are very good at knowing how to push these buttons. I have one daughter particularly, her name is Serena, that can really do this very well. She's real good at it. She's always giving me advice almost every day on how to be a better parent. She even said to me one time, I can't believe you actually wrote a book on how to be a better parent. I just can't believe that. She was about 9 years old, telling me this. You really wrote that? And whenever she gives me this advice, it's like, or she starts going into one of her routines, I find myself, really being challenged. I don't usually turn around and say, I honor you for... I'm usually saying, well, But nevertheless, there's a part of me that recognizes this, and I also recognize it in my relationship with my wife. And we've been together for a long time, and there are areas where she will say something, and I will find myself, and then I'll stop. You see, because essentially, the ego part of us wants us to be right, whereas the higher part of us always wants what? Peace. That's all it ever wants. So it's like you have to really learn, if you're going to feel worthy of having something show up in your life, how to be peaceful. And the way to be peaceful in your life is to, in all of your relationships, when you have a choice to be right or to be kind, to just pick kind, to just choose to be kind at any given moment in your life. You are honoring that higher part of you, you feel peaceful, and you've let go of the ego need, which says, wait a minute, you're important. And you have to prove that this other person shouldn't have done that, and all of that kind of stuff. But Serena, I remember her telling me, she's great. She would tell me, giving me advice on how to be a parent. And one day I just had it with her. And I said, Serena, I said, it's time for you to stop telling me what kind of a parent to be, and stop blaming me for the kind of parent I am, and take responsibility yourself for the kind of parent that I am. And she stopped, and she assumed this pose that she always assumes with her hand on her hip, and her knee going up and down real fast. And she said, you want to run that one by me one more time? You want me, is that what I heard? You want me to be responsible for the kind of parent you are? I said, exactly. She said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, before you came here, you had a choice. You have certain heroic missions that you have to fulfill while you're here on this planet. And I'm giving her this little lecture. You know, she said, well, what do you mean before I came here? She said, I don't remember that. I said, well, your memory isn't anything that you should rely upon to determine whether this works or doesn't work. You don't remember being 4 months old and being in your crib and throwing up all over it, but you did. You don't remember your dreams last night. You don't remember what you had for dinner last Thursday. Your memory isn't a good indicator of what it was. Just trust me, this is true. Before you come here, you choose your parents. You get to pick who your parents are. And you have certain lessons that you have to learn, and you picked me to be your father, and you picked Mom to be your mother, and you should stop complaining about the choice that you made. She said, I don't remember any of this. I said, well, forget about whether you remember it or not. She said, you're telling me that I chose you to be my father before I came here, and I had lessons to learn through you. I said, exactly. And you should stop blaming me. You should just take responsibility for the choice you made. She said, I must have been in a big hurry. So, these are your tests, all right? So what I would like you to think about when you think about honoring your worthiness to receive anything is that all of the people in your life that you find yourself in conflict with or having a difficult time with, whether they're strangers or spouses or children or grandparents or in-laws or even people who are no longer here on this earth plane, if you can say to yourself, when I have this choice at any given moment to be right or to be kind, and I'm going to let my ego get out of this thing, and I'm going to choose to be at peace, as it says in the Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this at any given moment. And then when you find yourself in these relationships with contentious people, and you find yourself being able to be at peace when they push those buttons, you'll know that the reason that they showed up in your life in the first place is to teach you to honor your own worthiness. That's why you're with them. That's what they're there for. These are teachers, just like you are teachers to others. And you can let go of that ego-driven need to constantly be proving yourself and to make yourself right, and to make more than making yourself right, to make them wrong, which is what we often do in this whole business of not honoring that.